I'm wearing pretty feet today. So I figured, let's have a story time. Let's have a story time about a cat and how I got the nickname Cat. And so this is something else that you could kind of tack on to my Just Knows video about strange occurrences that have happened to me when I was a kid or throughout my life. But a lot of them happened when I was young. So I grew up in Cape May, for those of you who don't know, and for those of you who have never been there or seen it. Let's see if I can pull something up for you quickly. Oh, we'll get back to this little kitty. Come on. If this thing would like to cooperate with me. Maybe that's easier? Yeah, okay. We'll do that instead. Cape May, New Jersey. So here it is. It's a very lovely little beach town in New Jersey. It's the most southern point of New Jersey. And I remember we lived in a few places on the island. We moved around to at least 2 or 3 different houses. And at one point we were living on 4th Avenue. And there was this kid who lived right down the street from me named Mikey. He and I were actually still Facebook friends. I'm bad at keeping in touch with people, but I keep tabs on him once in a while and see stuff that comes across my feed. And I kind of grew up with this dude. He's a guy now. Because, I mean, there weren't that many families with kids around my age on the island, so a lot of times the moms would all plan and get together at the beach at the same time throughout the summer during our summer vacations. And the children would all just be let loose on the beach to play and tear it up and explore, and the moms would just sit and hang out in a row in groups, sunning themselves and gossiping. And so, yeah, it was a pretty, for the most part, idyllic childhood in terms of location, I guess. And this was before people were too worried about being kidnapped by creepers. So we were allowed to basically just run up and down the beach and just come back once in a while when we wanted some money to go up to the arcade and get some ice cream or some cheese fries or play some of the, the skee balls games and stuff. So anyway, yeah. So in very nice houses like this. And so Mike and his mom, they lived in a very nice looking house. It was looked somewhat Victorian, but not quite as bedazzled with the gingerbread like this one. But it was a very nice little sort of old house. They lived right down the street. I could walk out from my front door to the sidewalk and turn right and look down the street and see his house. And the house had been turned into 2 different apartments. So there was an upstairs apartment and a downstairs apartment. And Mike and his mom lived in the upstairs apartment. And I remember as soon as you would go in through the front door, you had to go up a flight of steps to get up to the main landing. And my mom had taken my sisters and I over there one day, and I remember they were all sort of hanging out, all upstairs on the main part of the apartment, and I could hear my mom and Mike's mom chatting, and I was already enamored of cats and any animals at that point. This would have been when I was maybe like 7 or 8 years old, and Mike and his mom had this black cat. Here she is. And her name was Sugar. I mean, this isn't her, but I'm just, showing you a black cat, trying to give you some images to look at. So, and they probably got the black cat. I believe they got her from us. We had a couple of cats, and one of them had a litter, And we wound up giving those kittens away to various families. And I believe one of them went to Mike and his mom, and it was this little black girl cat they named her Sugar because she was so sweet. She was a very sweet cat. She was very social. And I just remember this strangest thing that happened to me. I was sitting down on the flight of steps leading up into their apartment. And their cat Sugar was sitting on a few steps above me, but she was it made her eye level with myself. So I was sitting there on the steps, just kind of coaxing her to come closer so I could pet her. And I remember locking into her eyes. And for a few minutes, I just kept staring. It was the same as the video I made with the Just Knows, called My Just Knows, when I was talking about, I just felt like I had to stare at this box, this cabinet. I didn't know why, but my attention was just drawn to this cabinet, and turned out there was a snake in there. It was the same thing. I felt like I was just drawn to looking in this cat's eyes suddenly. And so I started just very deeply staring into the blackness of the pupils of her eyes. And and something happened. It was like whatever divided she and I dissipated for a moment, just a split second. And it was as if there was no difference between the cat and myself. Just a second. Not even. And suddenly something snapped us out of it. And I sort of just was bewildered. I remember just snapping out of it and being bewildered. I just kind of got lost in her eyes. I don't know how else to explain it. And it really was as if she and I were somehow, for a moment, on some plane, we were somewhere else together, and there was just, she wasn't a cat, I wasn't a person, and there was just nothingness there. But we were aware, but there was nothingness. I don't know. It's so hard to explain. Anyway, I remember just sort of being in a little bit of bewilderment after we snapped out of it, and she immediately freaked out. She lost her shit. This cat yowled and just tore ass up the steps and disappeared into some part of the apartment and made such a scene. She just freaked out that my mom and Mike's mom were like, "Hey, what's up? What's going on? Something wrong?" And I was like, "I don't know what happened. I was just staring at her," and she just freaked out and ran off. And they tried to they tried to coax her out of her hiding spot, and she wouldn't come out. She just wouldn't let anyone touch her. And she was freaked out. And then nobody else really, I think they just sort of, my mom and Mike's mom were just like, she'll get over it, and just got on with chatting. And I don't remember anything else that happened during the rest of that visit. I just remember that specific little incident that happened because, again, that weird moment where I was just fixated on her eyes and the depths in the black of her eyes, and somehow got lost in there for a moment. And it was as if she and I were connected and we were a part of the same thing, and there was nothing that separated us. And then she just flipped out and went and hid. So I didn't think much of it for a while after that. I just assumed, the cat would be all right. And it turns out, so I ran into Mike many years later, when we were much older. We might have been high school age or college age, something like that. I didn't go to the same high school that he did because I was sent away to a private boarding school that was 2 hours away. So So, but I ran into, I would run into the kids I grew up with on the beaches and such, once in a while when I was home and chat with them. And at one point, Mike and I were in a conversation and I mentioned Sugar, although I didn't remember her name at that time, actually. I just said, yeah, and I remember this black cat that you guys had that, like, I stared in her eyes for a while and she just, like, freaked out and ran up the steps and, like, hid and, like, wouldn't come out. And Mike said to me, now maybe he was fucking with me, but I don't think he was. It didn't seem like he was. I didn't get any feeling like he was lying to me. But Mike said to me, oh yeah, that was Sugar. That was the craziest thing. I'm roughly quoting him. Because he said, we named her Sugar because she was so sweet and kind and nice. And it's like, yeah. And he said that after that happened, after I stared in her eyes, after she freaked out that day, he said that she wouldn't ever let anyone touch her again after that. She would like hide everywhere. She wouldn't come out. And she stopped eating. She just totally stopped eating. And then he said she died within a few days. So, wow. I started getting in my head at one point when I heard that. I mean, that just devastated me. I think I already, you know what? I don't think this was even, I don't know. I'm trying to remember if I knew that the cat was dead by the time I went into Petty, which would have been 8th grade. But that moment, that incident with the cat always stuck with me, even before I knew she had died, if that's true. And I started getting it in my head, maybe like a piece of me went into the cat, some piece of like the little girl me got stuck in the cat and couldn't get out and went crazy and died. Like, could you imagine if some little piece of a little girl's consciousness got stuck in a cat's body? That's frightening if you really put yourself there. So, that's something that always kind of haunted me. But yeah, and so I wanted to point out a few things about pupils of the eyes and black mirrors. So here's a little bit something about cat's eyes. That you can read off. You know, they're supposed to give, that's not as interesting as, you know, they're supposed to give you spiritual awakening and insight. Oh, so this is kind of what it was like. I was staring into, and I love this picture because, oh, come on. There we go. This cat looks just like my cat, Pip. His face looks just like Pip's face. So, yeah, I don't know if you guys ever have seen this movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves. And he stares into this cat's eyes so that he can sort of tap into the other world. He's going to, like, he's trying to tap into hell. And he's sort of like, the cats are in and out. They're sort of half in this world, half in the other world to begin with. And so he starts staring into this cat's eyes so that he can kind of, like, get into that other world. So, yeah, it's worth watching at least once. It's a watchable movie, at least. It's called Constantine. And then I wanted to definitely touch upon, remind you guys to look into things like black obsidian mirrors. The Aztecs used these as sort of scrying mirrors to look into another world, the other side, and ask questions and try to learn secrets and truths and such. And then for those of you, this was a pretty good series. I saw at least some of it, but I'm not big on consuming like Netflix stuff like that. I haven't been on Netflix in years, actually, I think. What's this on Netflix? I don't know where I saw it. I saw a little bit of it, though. A few episodes. Black Mirror, yeah, it was pretty good. So think about how your phone is like a Black Mirror, guys. And then I wanted to point out the pupils of the eyes. Another Black Mirror, in a way. And I'll bring up again, I'll remind you guys of Ona. Ona, Order of Nine Angles, and how a lot of the imagery associated with them, I think one of the better ways to see it is through like a lot of the tarot images. They have a whole tarot deck that one of their members designed. But images of people that in a lot of the published works associated with Ona typically have these very dark black eyes. For some of them, it's like the whole eye is blackened. So that's another connection to be aware of. And what, to try and understand what they're relaying with the totally black eyes, when you consider that these pupils, the black parts of our eyes, are considered to be doorways almost into another realm, another place, another world that's sort of laying over top of the world that we're aware of, the intangible side of life that's all around us. We just don't perceive it if we're operating entirely from the flesh and the human body. But yeah, so consider all this stuff. And I just wanted to, tell you guys that story about how, I don't know, I guess it drove a cat crazy to commit suicide. I didn't mean to. It really upsets me when I think about it sometimes, and what the outcome was. I mean, even if it's nonsense that like a little piece of my whatever I am got trapped in the cat, even if that's nonsense, somehow something happened to the cat. It had some kind of a realization or something that drove it insane and made it stop eating. So yeah, it's upsetting, but I'll leave it at that. You guys should definitely look into some of these topics some more. Definitely look into the obsidian mirrors, Aztec obsidian mirrors. That's an interesting one. And like I said, read about Ona a bit more. They're worth knowing about, if for no other reason than you should probably know about a group of people that are very dangerous, that operate all around you. They don't have, from what I understand, they don't have any one central location. Like some cults, they just have sort of like this one commune hippie type place or a town that they've sort of taken over. But as far as I understand it, Ona is very much widespread, and a big part of their operation is very discreet and secretive, and they're just sort of like this underground network. So look into that. Very much like the Frankists. The Frankists are known to have started up, I believe, in Frankfurt, or that was sort of like their base of operations, their official base of operations for a while. But Um, I think that well, I don't think I know. There's lots of evidence that the families of the Frankist movement spread out all over the place. They went to Ireland. They pretend converted to Roman Catholicism. They changed their name slightly, like the mayors became the Mars. You know, like Bill Maher. You know? Stuff like that. Some of them went to Italy and became Tarantinos. You know, like that. Hey, it's really interesting that Quentin Tarantino's like grandparents or great grandparents, you know, from back in the old country in Italy, they're similar names on lists of the Frankist families that moved down to Italy right around the same time period. Not similar, like identical, but I haven't been able to prove exactly yet that that it's his descendants, because it's more like they're such common names like Maria blah blah blah, Constantina blah blah blah. It wasn't that name, but you know, and it was a pretty typical name, as in there could have at least been like one other woman by that name. So I wanted to make sure it was the exact right person. I'm sort of at that stage, but that's on the back burner for a while. But I still have a good amount of connection, that's showing that Quentin Tarantino is, here's Quentin Tarantino. For those of you who don't know who Quentin Tarantino is, let's pull that jackass up. Where's Quentin? I'm a big fan, no, really. Big fan of your movies. Lovely. But I probably shouldn't be. So here's Quentin Tarantino. He's made stuff like Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill. He was in Dusk Till Dawn with George Clooney. That's probably my favorite one. So, no, maybe not. I love Kill Bill. I'd sooner watch Kill Bill than From Dusk Till Dawn. But hi, baby girl. My cat's all right, honey bunny. So yeah, Quentin Tarantino. Some of his ancestors going not that far back to Italy look like they could have very easily been Frankists. It's just a matter of making sure that that his great grandparents or whatever, their names are the people who are listed as being part of the Frankist movement that moved down there and changed their name to this and this, to Tarantino, that those are the exact same people, just because the first names are also sort of generic. Yeah. Again, I've been saying, like, the Frankists established themselves pretty steadily, they rooted themselves pretty deep in a lot of areas, particularly in Hollywood, because they want to control the media that goes out to the masses. This makes sense for any group of people that aren't total idiots. I'm going to wash my hands. That are trying to have sway over the population and are trying to get the population to view the world in a certain way, perhaps in a way that aligns itself with their more Kabbalistic, devil-worshipping belief system, you know? So, and perhaps that's why a lot of the stories coming out of Hollywood have roughly the same feel to them. If you break them down, they have roughly the same patterns in the lessons that or the deeper story being told. So I'll leave it there. Can anyone explain to me how I managed, like, what happened when I stared into that cat's eyes and went to some other place? With words, please. I'd prefer not to. I don't think I want to be shown. That's not in any You know what I mean. I don't want any freaks showing up at my door going like, I'll show you the other side. You know, like, nah. Can you use some more words? All right, I'm going to end it there. I'm just prattling on at this point. Bye.